Did the D-backs develop themselves an ace because Brandon Pfaadt was electric as the D-backs take down the LA Dodgers 7-3 in game number 2?
You are Locked On Diamondbacks, your daily Arizona Diamondbacks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into the Locked On Diamondbacks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. You're listening to who? Always charismatic host of this podcast, Millard Thomas. I'm a multimedia journalist and I'm a graphic designer. So please go check out my website, millardthomas24.myportfolio.com. On there, you can see all my latest work, from my packages to my articles to my photos and my graphic design. Today's episode is brought to you by eBay Motors. From brakes to exhaust kits and beyond, eBay Motors has over 122 million parts to keep your ride or die alive. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to bring home that big win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply. eBay guaranteed fit only available to U.S. customers. On today's Locked On Diamondbacks podcast, we'll talk about Brandon Pfaadt shoving against the LA Dodgers in Game 2, and we'll power rank the NL teams I think are the biggest threat to the D-backs for that third wildcard spot. But before we get into that, thank you for making Locked On Diamondbacks your first listen every day. I would not be able to do this podcast without you, my loyal listeners, sharing, subscribing, reviewing, doing all that so I could do this podcast for you. Thank you. It's free. It's available on all platforms. So please continue to tell your friends. One of those platforms is YouTube. So please hit subscribe to Locked On Diamondbacks on YouTube. Our goal is to hit 2,000 subs by the All-Star break. So please hit subscribe to Locked On Diamondbacks on YouTube. But now let's talk about game number 2 against the LA Dodgers, because the D-backs had themselves a hell of a game. They took down the Dodgers 7-3, and they did everything in that game that we typically don't see from the Arizona Diamondbacks, especially the last few weeks. We saw our starting pitcher look like an absolute ace. We got contributions from top to bottom in the lineup. We got elite bullpen pitching, and we got great defense. Really, not much more you can ask for if you're a D-backs fan. They did everything in this game, and it makes you wonder, why can't the D-backs do this more often? If you're going to do it against the LA Dodgers, why can't you do it against like the Detroit Tigers of the world at home? Makes this team so frustrating, but great to see them get the victory in game number 2. Brandon Pfaadt is our savior. I did a podcast yesterday saying, you know what? Where's all the pitchers that the D-backs have developed? Because we went to this game number 2 with the Dodgers throwing out another pitching arm from their minor leagues that they developed in Gavin Stone. We've seen the Landon Knacks. We've seen the Bobby Millers. We see them produce guys year after year. And I want to know on yesterday's podcast, where are the pitchers that the D-backs have developed? Well, here he is. Brandon Pfaadt is our savior in that category, because in game number 2, he gave the Dodgers a reminder of that 2023 postseason where he looked phenomenal. And in this game, he looked phenomenal as well, because Pfaadt, after giving up a leadoff walk to Mookie Betts, retired 9 hitters in a row and 15 of the first 17 batters to start a game. He was absolutely locked in. His stat line on the day: 6 innings, 4 hits, 2 earned runs, 7 strikeouts, and 1 walk. When you go back and look at some of those strikeouts, go back to that first Will Smith strikeout. Paint. Go back to that first Teoscar Hernandez strikeout. Paint. Go back to that first Kike Hernandez strikeout. Paint. When he's in the zone and the sweeper and the fastball is lock and step with each other, he can dial it up with such precision over what we saw over the last few weeks that it's insane how much it just like on the edge of the zone. If you're an opposing batter, it just locks you up because you're like, I can't do anything. If I swing, I'm not going to get quality contact. And it also doesn't look like a strike. And then it just barely crosses the edge of the strike zone. And also, good job by the umps to always recognize when Brandon Pfaadt is able to dial it up with some mastery precision, because he does get a good umpire, ball strike call most of the time from these guys. So Brandon Pfaadt locked in once again and looked elite. And now he's on this little recent run where he's been phenomenal. Another quality start for Pfaadt. I think he has like 6 now on the season. I haven't double checked after this game, but he's been really good for the D-backs this year. Outside of really 2 bad starts, he's basically giving you a quality start every single time outside of those 2 bad starts from this year. So we love the progression and the development that we've seen from Brandon Pfaadt this year. We love the fact that the offense had an incredible game. Literally up and down the lineup, every single person had at least one hit in this game. I love the fact that we had 4 straight singles in the second because that's what we have not seen enough from this D-backs lineup. Dude after dude getting hits, a sequencing of hits, a string together of hits is not something that we've seen a lot from this D-backs offense over the last few weeks, and they were able to do that in perfect unison in the second inning. Christian Walker, he crushed a home run in this game, 111 miles off the bat, 414 feet. And fun fact, would have been a home run in all 30 ballparks. He has absolutely crushed the Dodgers this season and in his entire career. I think they said he has like 13 home runs in like 35 games or something. Like it's definitely under 40 games. He has 13 home runs. And just this season alone, over 1,000 OPS against the Dodgers. He absolutely loves playing in LA. And another guy who loves playing in LA is former LA Dodger Jock Peterson, who has been really good for the D-backs this season, but we could use a little bit more in the home run power department. That's where he came through today in this game as he had himself a home run, 107.8 miles per hour off the bat, 409 feet. But unfortunately, the only place it would not have been a home run would have been Oracle Park, where the San Francisco Giants play. Kenta Marte, he extended his hitting streak. He has been really good for the D-backs during the hitting streak. Sad that his batting average has actually gone down during that time, but all season, Kenta Marte has been absolutely phenomenal, owns the longest hitting streak in Major League Baseball, and I believe he will be starting the All-Star game at second base. Corbin Carroll, love the opposite field double off the wall by Carroll. He now has a hit in 4 straight games. He could potentially be heating up. Lourdes Gurriel, 4 straight games himself with 2 multi-hit games in that period. And 5 of his last 6 games, he has a hit. So maybe Gurriel and Carroll are both heating up. Back-to-back games with a hit for Eugenio Suarez. So we all like to see that. Maybe the D-backs needed to play the Dodgers to break out of their slump because the Bats seem to be waking up a little bit in this series. Bullpen, no stress at all. Ryan Thompson, who has been elite all season, continued his run of dominance. And then Joe Mantiply, who is, shaky at times, only needed 4 pitches to get 2 outs. He did his job. And then the defense, incredible all night. Sliding catches by Carroll, diving stops by Kevin Newman. Just a complete effort by the D-backs. You wish you could get it more often. Starting pitching elite, bullpen elite, offense elite, defense elite. Great job by the D-backs to shove it to the Dodgers in game number 2. But can they do it again in the series finale against the LA Dodgers? Well, we'll talk about who's going to be starting in segment number 2. I want to talk to you guys about my favorite fantasy sports app because it's called Prize Picks. I'm winning money on there. I'm having a great time, and I think you guys need to join me. Prize Pick is America's #1 fantasy sports app with more than 3 million members. It is the easiest and most exciting way to get in on the action while you watch your favorite sports and players. You just pick more or less on 2 or more player stats and watch the winnings roll in. You can even get in on the playoff action with basketball and hockey and win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks as you and the world's best players take the game to a new level during basketball's postseason. My favorite thing to do during the basketball postseason, now that the Timberwolves and Mavericks are facing off, I'm taking the over on the stats for both Luca when it comes to points and Anthony Edwards when it comes to points. And if that money, if that little thing hits and I see money going to my account, I'm going to be a very happy camper. And if you want to be a happy person too, just download the app today. Use code Locked on MLB for first deposit match up to $100. Again, download the app, Prize Picks, use code all lowercase Locked on MLB for a first deposit match up to $100. Prize Picks, pick more, pick less. It's that easy. All right. Let's get back into the Locked on Diamondbacks podcast. And before we power rank the NL teams I think are the biggest threat to the D-backs in the wild card race, some interesting news for the finale for the LA Dodgers. Doesn't look like Ryan Nelson will be starting potentially. It sounds like Torey Lovello is going to not be going with him. It sounds like there will be an opener in the finale and potentially some roster moves will be made. That's according to Torey Lovello. So, what does that mean exactly? Does that mean a Slade and a Ryan Nelson both get sent down? Do one of them move to the bullpen? Could we see a Blake Walston back in action for the D-backs? Could we even get crazy and see the debut of like a Christian Mena? Don't know exactly what the D-backs have in store, but very curious to see what the move is tomorrow and what happens to the future of both Slade and Ryan Nelson, because after his most recent start, it feels like the nails in the coffin for Slade for at least, short term, needs to go take a break in AAA. For Ryan Nelson, he hasn't been as good recently either, but I could see the D-back saying, let's send down Slade and move Ryan Nelson to the bullpen. So we'll see what that roster move is. But now I want to do a little power ranking of the teams that I think are the biggest threat to the D-backs in the wild card race. We won't talk about every National League team. So we're not talking about either the Braves or Phillies because they're way better than the D-backs. And we're not talking about the Marlins or the Rockies because I think they have no chance at a wild card. We're keeping it to 8 teams: Padres, Cubs, Giants, Reds, Cardinals, Nationals, Mets, Pirates. And here is my power ranking. We will start from the top. The team that scares me the most in the NL wildcard race is the San Diego Padres. Listen, I know the big three hasn't been good this year, and they weren't really that good last year. Fernando Tatis was good last year, but he hasn't been as good this season. I still have a lot of hope that he is going to take off in the second half. And I say hope because I have him on a bunch of fantasy teams, so I need a little bit more from a Fernando Tatis. And I do think he will get better as the season progresses. Machado and Bogarts, they have struggled all year and they have also struggled last year. So we'll see what happens to them. But they have gotten great contributions from guys like Jeraxon Profar, who I know I always say his name wrong. Jackson Merrill hasn't been bad this year. Like, there's still a lot of top end talent in that lineup for the Padres, and they have up and coming talent as well. You look at the rotation, Darvish is having a bounce back. Dylan Cease has been a major upgrade over Blake Snell. And then also, we know the San Diego Padres are a team that is not afraid to get aggressive. We've seen AJ Preller make a bunch of moves in the offseason typically to acquire players, right? Not afraid to move off some of those prospects. He already made a move in season in 2024 by acquiring Luis Ariz from the Miami Marlins. The Padres scare me because I think they have a lot of talent, and they are also the team that would be most aggressive buyers at a trade deadline or just overall in the trade market. So Padres, number one on my power ranking for teams that I think are the biggest threat to the D-backs in the wild card race. Number two, I think, is the Chicago Cubs. Right now, they are loaded with Cy Young candidates. But my question is, how long can that last? Shoto Imanga has been elite this season. I don't know if I said his name right, but I know Shoto, he's been elite this season, and I do trust that he can keep it going. All those guys from Japan that are coming over are just absolutely elite. And I'm like, can we just sign every time someone gets posted from Japan and they're considered like an all-star level player or they dominated it over there? Like, I'm ready just to make a whole team of defected Japanese players that have come over from that country because all of them step in right away and pitch or hit at an all-star level from day one. And I would love to see someone do a little experiment where it's like, yeah, I'm just going to keep signing the best player out of Japan every single year and build my team that way, because I think someone could build a World Series contender if they did that. But like I was saying, Shoto, I trust him to continue his reign of dominance. But guys like Jameson Taillon, do I trust him? Not too sure. Mark Leiter Jr. has been elite out the pen. Their bullpen is pretty good. But the lineup, competitive, but the ceiling of that lineup just doesn't scare me. And ceiling is a word that we'll use a lot in this segment. I think Cody Bellinger is a stud, but he's not having as good of a season that he had last year. And then guys like Seiya Suzuki are also really good, but I just don't see the top end talent in that lineup that should scare me. So I have them second in my power ranking right now. I trust their pitching to be good going forward, but do I trust their pitching to sustain at the level that it's been at? I don't know. The Cy Young level, I don't know. I think Tyone could be fine. I think Assad could be fine, but do I expect them to pitch at a Cy Young level? I don't think so. I think the lineup has been good, not great. That's why the Cubs are number 2 in my power ranking. Number 3, though, for me, I got the San Francisco Giants. Never liked this team on paper, usually entering a season, but they always perform better than my expectation level for them. But I will say, right now with the Giants, things are going not in the right direction, as it seems like Jung Ho Lee will be out the entire season. He's been a bright spot for that team. I really like him a lot. Blake Snell, he's been really bad for the Giants, and he's also hurt right now. We'll see what happens with him if he can turn around his season and his health. I do think the Jordan Hicks of the world, that has been a fantastic signing, a reliever turned rotation starter. We know he always had nasty stuff, can ratchet up to 100 miles per hour, but he's been way better than I ever thought he was going to be as a starter. Kyle Harrison, also really good right away, has stepped in. Just when I look at the Giants team, I just don't, like I say with the Cubs, don't see the ceiling in their lineup. I don't see the top end talent. Guys like Michael Conforto are hurt. Jorge Soler has not exactly stepped up this year for the Giants. The Giants, every single year, I don't think they're a high ceiling team, but I do think they have a super high floor. And right now, the Giants, they're good. They're competitive. They'll be in the mix for the wild card race, but they just don't scare me. I think the D-backs are more talented than them. And if it came down to, a weekend series late in the year, D-backs versus Giants, I like the D-backs chances in that scenario. Then finally, the last team I'll talk about in segment number 2 in my power ranking is the Cincinnati Reds, who check in at number 4, loaded with young talent who have either not been as good this year or not been that healthy. But still, I love the amount of talent that they have in their lineup and rotation. We know Ella De La Cruz is a superstar. That rotation is finally rounding into form. Guys like Hunter Green and Andrew Abbott are taking the next step. The bullpen needs to be improved, but I think up and down that lineup and rotation, there is a lot of talent on the Reds, and I think they're a team that's still a year away, but they're a year away from being a team to contend with and be scared of in the World Series race. So Reds still one more season, but right now, my 1 through 4 of who I think the biggest threats to the D-backs are: Padres, Cubs, Giants, and Reds. And I'll give you the rest of my list in segment number 3. But hey, if you're having any car troubles, then I know the best place to go: eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance: superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers. All right. Let's get back into the Locked On Diamondbacks podcast. Let's wrap up the show by talking about the final teams that I have as the biggest threats to the D-backs, 1 through 4. One was Padres, two was Cubs, three was Giants, four was the Reds. At number 5, I got the St. Louis Cardinals. I know they are old, but they still have talent on that team. You still have Paul Goldschmidt and Nolan Arenado and some interesting young prospects they've called up in the last couple years. And Wilson Contreras is a good offensive catcher. The problem is Goldie sucks right now. Nolan Arenado sucks right now. The question is, how long can that keep up? They were not the best last year. Goldie better than Arenado, but this year, Goldie's significantly worse than Arenado, and it's hard to say there are signs of them turning around. We know Goldie at times has slow starts to the season, but he already seemed to be a little bit in the decline potentially last year, and then what he's done this season, maybe it makes sense. I also feel like those guys might need a change of scenery just because I just do not like what's been going on in St. Louis. And the Cardinals, their lineup kind of reminds me of the D-backs because I'm like, I do think there's a version where that lineup is good when you have the Goldies, the Arenados, the Jordan Walkers, Mason Wins. All of them could be really good for you and can have a pretty nice lineup, just like the D-backs. The problem is, dudes just aren't doing their job. And so for the Cardinals, I could see a path where their lineup wakes up, but also, wouldn't be surprised if it never does because their lineup never woke up last season and we saw Arenado and Goldie struggle. So, wouldn't be surprised if it happened again. Their rotation, it's old, but they do have some vets, and those vets know how to pitch. Sonny Gray is still a stud, and their bullpen is still good. So, for the Cardinals, it's mostly because of their age and the fact that this is year 2 of their lineup not hitting. But I still think they have enough talent to be number 5 in my power ranking. But there could be, if we do this again in a few months, because I forgot to mention, I'm doing this right now because we're about 50 games into the MLB season. So I thought it would be a fun thought exercise. Would love to do it again, either at the All-Star break or the 100-game mark. Don't know which one I want to do yet. But this could be a team where we do this update a second time that passes the St. Louis Cardinals because the Washington Nationals at number 6, I would not be surprised at all if I move them ahead in my power ranking in a couple months because I like a lot of the young talent on the Nationals. Mackenzie Gore, CJ Abrams. They have, I think, at least 3 dudes with double-digit stolen bases, a lot of team speed. I still think they're probably a year or 2 away from being really competitive, but do like the stockpiling of talent that they're doing in Washington. Their pitching staff is sneaky better than you might think. I just think they don't have a high ceiling, but I do think they have a pretty good floor right now. And they're going to have some money to spend this offseason because Patrick Corbin, who has been absolutely horrendous and one of the worst pitchers in Major League Baseball over the last few years, he is coming off the books finally at $35 million this year. The Nationals won't have to pay him any longer. I don't know if you guys heard me hiccup just now, but that's what I just did. Nationals, I think, have a lot of young talent. With some money getting freed up on the books this year, watch them to be a really competitive team in a year or two. Number 7 for me is the New York Mets, just like the St. Louis Cardinals, another team that's old. But the other issue with the New York Mets, they're old and they're expensive. They have the highest payroll in Major League Baseball. Pete Alonso, he's been good, but he hasn't been elite this year. Then Francisco Lindor, the number 2, he has just really fallen off since getting to New York. Just not enough production in their lineup. I do like some of the guys like Francisco Alvarez and Brett Beatty, but just not enough cohesion in their lineup right now. And then you look at that rotation. When your rotation is led by guys like Luis Severino and Sean Manaea, you're probably not going anywhere. And Edwin Diaz has not exactly looked great this year either. So just a lot of problems for the New York Mets. They're old, they're expensive, their stars aren't good enough. Their rotation is a bunch of dudes past their prime and has-beens, and their elite closer is not elite right now. New York Mets, number 7 in my power ranking. And then to round it out, I got the Pittsburgh Pirates at number 8. Just not enough star power in their lineup for me. O'Neal Cruz has not taken that next step and ascended. If Connor Joe is your best player, you're probably not a very good team. Do you think their rotation is sneaky better than we might expect? I don't think it would be a surprise if the Mets eventually get leapfrogged by the Pittsburgh Pirates, because I think the Mets are that bad. I could see the Pirates leapfrogging them if a guy like O'Neal Cruz, who had 2 balls hit over 120 miles per hour in tonight's game, he could be someone that could take another step forward. And then the rotation, like I mentioned, really good for the Pirates. Pretty young. A guy like Jared Jones has been really phenomenal this season. Their biggest issue is what happened to David Bednar, their elite closer. He has been downright bad this year. And if he does not turn it around, there's no chance that the Pirates take a wild card spot. But that is why they are last in my power ranking as threats to the D-backs in the National League wildcard race. And once again, to recap, number 8, the Pirates, 7 Mets, 6 Nationals, 5 Cardinals, 4 Reds, 3 Giants, 2 Cubs, and number 1, the San Diego Padres. Now that's it for this edition of the Locked On Diamondbacks podcast. Come back tomorrow for more Diamondbacks news coverage and insight. We'll talk after the D-backs take down the LA Dodgers in the series finale. And as always, stay safe, stay healthy. Doses.